Hello, everyone. My name is Deshawn, and I'm your host tonight for another episode of Coveted Conversations. But tonight, we're having a serious conversation about domestic violence. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but we need to be more aware more days than just 30, 31 days. We want to have a serious conversation. So, what makes it serious? We want to pull back some of the misconceptions, what domestic violence may look like to you. Who do you think is a victor, not necessarily a victim? Who does it affect? How does it affect other people? This is community social justice, and we're having a serious conversation about domestic violence. So go ahead, share this on your page. Go ahead, because there's somebody that needs to hear the information that we have to share. We've got a lot of things to share with you. For one, let's just start with help is available. So I want you to look at these numbers, screenshot it. It'll be made available in the chat a little later on. But I want to let you know that help is available and you're not alone. Now, this is a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about. It's taboo. It's something that we'll hide because it's a shame attached to it. But we're going to have a serious conversation. So who are we? We're community social justice. We're a group of like-minded individuals dedicated to bringing you the real information, the right information. We vet all our guests. We talk about things like financial literacy, legal and legislative laws, housing, education, voter rights, community action. We want you to have one central place where you can get all the information that you need. And that's what we're striving for. But tonight, we're talking about domestic violence. So I'm going to give you just a moment. Go ahead and share it. Go ahead and share it. Let us know where you're watching from. If you've got comments, questions, you need to know some information, let us know. Let us know because we want to help you tonight. We want to help you. Again, my name is Deshawn and I'm your host, but I'm not all just your host. This is a subject that's pretty dear to my heart. So let me reintroduce myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Deshawn. You may know me as a healthcare executive. You may know me as a published author. You may know me as a minister. You may know me as a motivational speaker. You may know me as a life coach. You may know me as a career coach. You may know me as a mother, an aunt, a sister, a friend. But do you know that I'm a victim of domestic violence? Behind this smile. So the songwriter said it best. You don't know my story or the things that I've been through. You can't feel my pain or what I had to go through to get here. So we're going to talk about it. Yeah, I know. Some of you might be a little shocked. Deshawn is so transparent. But if I can help somebody, if sharing my story helps you, it's all worth it. I have some amazing guests tonight. I have doctors. I have therapists. I have coaches. I've got survivors that is going to help you, help somebody you know, and give you the confidence that you don't have to look at this as something of guilt, a badge of shame, that you can make it. So I'm excited. Go ahead and share this. We're having a serious conversation about domestic violence. I'm your host, Deshawn, and I'm excited. So I'm just going to get started, guys. So if you was with us last week, you saw this doctor, Dr. Tommy Snow. Man, he was amazing. We had to get him back. So he shuffled some things around and is coming back. Can you just welcome to community social justice, Dr. Tommy Snow.
Thank you, DeShannon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Dr. Snow, can you just tell them a little bit? I mean, you have so many letters behind your name. I don't want to mess those up. But just tell us a little bit about what you do and who you help.
Okay. First of all, I am a licensed professional counselor. And in the state of Georgia, I am a certified domestic violence facilitator. And in that respect, what I do is I facilitate classes for perpetrators. And I facilitate classes for men perpetrators and women, female perpetrators. So we do have both. They are separate, though. And I am a certified anger management specialist.
Awesome. Okay, so come on, family. You see, we didn't half step here. We got people that knew what they were talking about. I want to bring on somebody else, though. This is Sonia Snow. Can you welcome Sonia Snow to Community Social Justice? Hey, Sonia.
Hi, DeShannon. Hi, Dr. Snow. How is everybody this evening?
Good. Hi, Sonia.
Sonia, can you tell us a little bit about you and who you help?
Certainly, DeShannon. I work with victims. I work with trauma. I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. I am also a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia. And so definitely feel called to work with those that have survived various forms of trauma, domestic violence, especially, and to just meet them where they are, walk alongside them to be able to continue the road they've already begun, that God has already begun in them towards their healing.
Awesome. Okay, so y'all know, look what we have here. So we can really talk about this. But before I bring my guest on, and one of my guests, you guys got to meet. Y'all met her a little bit last week. She plays a dual role in tonight's show. But Dr. Snow, what is domestic violence? Can you define it for our listeners?
Yes. Actually, to put away the psychobabble, domestic violence is any behavior that seeks to dominate and control another individual using some type of force. We call it power, to intimidate, to even cause them to just be demeaned as a person, but it's usually to control them and their lives.
Okay, so that's the broad overview. So,
Yes.
Sonia, who does this affect? I know Dr. Snow said he had sessions for women and men. So who does this affect? I mean, is it more dominant? What does the stats say?
You know, 1 out of every 4 women, and stats say 1 out of every 7 men. And so what we're talking about, DeShannon, is that domestic violence, oftentimes, it's going to impact the entire family system. It's going to impact not just the man, the woman. It's also going to impact the children. And in most cases, it impacts those that are closest to the victim, and especially those who are close to the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so listen, we know what it is. We heard a little bit about the stats, but I want to get to bringing on my next 2 guests, because when people look at me, I look perfectly fine to them. I present well in public. I have a high-powered position. I am on some big platforms. I do a lot of major things in my life. I'm always smiling. Shoot, I'm a life coach. I help other people get their life together. All the while holding on to a secret that I thought would literally destroy not only my life, but my career if I said something, or if I said it too loud. So I want to bring on Vanessa Whiting and welcome her to Community Social Justice. Hey, Vanessa.
Good evening. How's everybody?
Good.
Good.
Thank you for having me back, DeShannon.
Oh man, we're gonna have you back again and again. You just don't know it yet. But listen, Vanessa, tell us who you are professionally.
I am a licensed clinical pastoral counselor. a certified professional life coach, a author of the book, The Matrix, A Look Inside Domestic Violence, but I'm also a survivor.
So this
I
is
do
what I
some,
want, guys. I want you to look at Vanessa. I want you to look at me. I want you to get it out your mind that there is a type to this. And I'm going to talk to the doctors a little bit about why people don't come forward. But I want you to take a look at us. Did you hear Vanessa's credentials? Did you hear me run my receipts? We don't look like what you may think is happening inside homes that we've lived in. So I want to bring on my next guest because this person is near and dear to me. And so I want to just make sure that she's warm and welcome, guys. And she's a mother in our church, but she's, I'll jump in there and be somebody's child in a minute, whether she wants me or not. But this is Lorraine James. Can y'all welcome her to Community Social Justice?
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Miss James, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, I'm Lorraine James, and I'm a retired educator. I've been married twice, have one daughter from my first marriage, a son from my second, and right now, just being a prayer warrior and being one who intercedes on behalf of others in prayer.
Awesome. Okay. So now when you look at Mother, who says she's a retired educator, she has 2 children, she's been married a couple of times, but you wouldn't, and she's a prayer warrior, meaning she didn't just start praying 2 days ago. She's been praying for a very long time.
Oh, yes.
But Mother, tell us just a little bit about some of the things you've gone through.
The things I've gone through is verbal abuse. I've gone through where my children have heard my husband speak to me in a horrible manner, calling me everything but a child of God. Sometimes it would stir me up and I would start back at him. And it went on like this for a bit, but there were signs that kind of indicated going that way, especially after I got so sick and tired. I decided that I've got to get out of this because the police was called numerous of times. And I had one officer tell me, ma'am, you teach school and it looks so bad. You're constantly calling the police. He says, ma'am, you've got to get you some help and this needs to stop.
Now, hold
So
on
I
right there, Ms. James. Hold on. I want to talk with the doctor for a second. Dr. Snow, she said something. She said, the police said, because of your position, this looks bad. Do you find that that will stop a person because of perception? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Snow. I got you on mute. So hold on. There you go.
You know, Shannon, there are about 10 major systems in the human body, and everything else comes up under that. But the strongest influence of all people is the belief system. If I can control what you believe, I can control you. And ironically, the strongest thing that perpetrators use is the scriptures, it's the Bible. And we come up in homes that it is taught that women, or indicated that women should take it. They should take abuse. They should, even if they are abused, they should pray for the perpetrator that's abusing them. As a matter of fact, it's the belief of so many women that it is their fault that this man is abusing them. And so when you have this belief system, you don't need iron bars to keep you there. You don't need other things. Just your mind makes you stay there and take that. So even when the police is telling women that they need to leave. And women know many times that that's the best thing, but their belief system just won't let them go. And so they stay behind that mental bar.
Okay, now, Miss Lorraine, I'm going to let you tell some more of your story in a minute, but I want to talk to Vanessa a second. Dr. Snow opened up a door that I was going to open a little bit later about the things that people have said. And I want to know if any of these things resonate with you. That's a good man. What are you doing at home that he's not happy with? What you won't do, another woman will. A piece of man is better than no man at all. Girl, all men do something. It's our job to stay and pray for them. So Vanessa, tell us if any of those things were ever said to you as you begin to walk us through your story.
Well, mine did a little bit, but I have maybe a little bit of spin on my story because um, my ex was the son of a preacher. So some of those things were said to me, but the biggest thing for me was the Bible because he knew that I love God, and we had a strong biblical based background, family, my father. So he constantly used the word to hold me until I got enough nerve to say, I'm going to have a different conversation with God because this behavior is just not right. So I can relate to all of that. But I kind of felt bound to a degree because I think when you grow up with a strong foundation of faith, and you go in with your vows, and you want to be faithful to those vows, and you want to honor what God has set before you. It's hard. It is a mental battle when you hear God wouldn't want you to leave me. Why would you leave me? God is not going to be pleased with that. So I struggled with that for a long time, because I wanted to do what was right. So I suffered abuse for probably a lot longer than I should have until I got the courage, to make the step and say, this cannot be what God wants for me.
Sonia, I see you working over there. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me, Sonia? Well, Sonia, can you hear me now? Okay, that's okay. That's all right. So listen, Dr. Snow, you heard both of them are in a mental battle as well. Now they'll get into some. I've listened to both of their stories, to police call, to physical violence. But for me, Dr. Snow, and we're gonna get back to some of this advice we've been getting from the church and all of this. But for me, it was, well, that's just how he is. I started excusing the behavior because it became normal to me. And, I almost didn't pay it any attention. So where you find women or men move from shock that this is happening to almost acceptance?
Okay, we do grow up in a society where people are trying to make marriage work. You don't just get into it to try to just get out of it, and you're trying to make the best of it as much as possible. So you will find yourself making excuses, even though they're illogical, not rational, and you and other people can see that they are not rational, but to you it makes sense. So people stay for various reasons. Even myself, I don't always talk about it all the time, but I'm also a survivor of domestic violence, a man. We many times that's not talked about why men stay in abusive relationship. I know what it's like to be having a knife put in your back and scratched up and beat up and things of that nature. But still I made excuses because I was trying to make it work. And that's what we do, DeShannon. We try. It's that mental construct we have in our minds. We really want to try to make this work as much as possible.
Yeah, I want to get back to Mother Lorraine, because when people see you, they see the prayer warrior. They see the person who, before you shared it today, they may not have known that you've been married twice, and that's like, in the church
Yes.
now. And it seems like, um, what would make you put up with something like that? And what were you putting up with? You said verbal abuse, and you shared something with me
It,
this morning that it affected more people than you. So I just want you to walk us through
yeah.
maybe a time that made you say, this enough is enough.
Well, Minister DeShannon, when you are cursed out, when you're called every name that there is, and your children are watching this occur with their mother. And, the more he would talk, the more I would get in a rage. But one day I was standing at the sink and looked like in my spirit, it was just, if you continue to argue with him, he's going to continue to say things to you. So I just would shut up. I would just hear it, but I would close off to it. And one day, standing there at the sink, he came in and he put his hands on the Bible. He looked me eyeball to eyeball. He said, "You see this Bible?" He says, "I will kill you." And then he called me such a horrible name. And I tell you, that really just stuck into me such a way that I said, this will not continue to happen. It will not continue around my children. I had to change it. Then the stalking came after I got him out of the house. I went to the battered women in the city of Decatur. They told me that I needed to take out a protective order to get him out of the house, to get him away from there. And I did. I came back. They said they would serve him at the home with the protective order. And that would, with the police, he would have to leave, get his things and leave. This occurred. But then the stalking, where I could be walking down the hall to the kitchen, and I look up and his face is in the window. And I would, close off my blinds and just do all kind of, so that bit of fear began to set in. But being one that talked to the Lord, tears would come down my face, and I would begin to pray. And I would say, "Lord, you said in your word, no weapon formed against me shall be able to prosper. Lord, you said you'll be a protector of me, and a protector of my children." Not knowing, when I shared with my daughter this morning, after so many years, I began to tell her I was going to appear and share my story and just tell it like it is. The phone got so quiet. Next thing I know, I kept saying, "What's the matter? What's wrong? I can't hear you." She burst out crying, telling me that how it had affected her and how she had to talk with her counselors in high school, and how she couldn't really talk to anybody about it because she saw me go through so much. And she wanted to be excellent in school. And not only was that, but he would tell her, you better not come home with less than an A. You would need to don't come home um, unless you brought the best report card it is, because I know you're smart. And she was receiving that kind of rebuttal, even on her end. So she began to tell me that she's never shared it with anyone, but even through her college years and all, the stress the anxiety that she experienced and all, it came from that. And she said she only shared when she got ready to get married to her husband. So I
Well,
decided to.
Mother, I want to talk to Sonia. Sonia, can you hear me now?
A little, a little. I'm still having some technical challenges, I guess, on my end. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you perfectly.
Yes.
We can hear
Okay.
you perfectly. One of the things that Mother Lorraine talked about was fear. Fear will keep you somewhere, because he started stalking her to scare her into submission. I guess I'm going to use that word. Do you find that that's
You can
common?
use.
Absolutely. The domestic violence, and this may have been stated already, forgive me for the restate, is about the power and control. And so most of the time, that place of initiating fear is a place where the abuser often feels powerful. That place of fear often makes the abuser feel that he or she is in control. And so it becomes like fuel to the fire. They continue to utilize that because they see the results that they are actually wanting to keep initiating the abuse, to keep perpetrating the abuse. Very
Okay,
common.
Vanessa. Now, you know, me and you talked the other day.
Mhm.
We were talking like we old girlfriends, because we shared a lot of commonalities when it came to our stories. So when people look at you, you're all of these things. You know, you're licensed this, you're a published author, you're a motivational speaker, you're absolutely gorgeous. When they see you, they have no idea. You said, hey, this guy was a son of a pastor. You loved God. You honored your vows. But what was one of the most horrific things that was ever done to you?
I think the night that I had a 9mm gun held to my temple, and I didn't realize that and it still bothers me. I didn't realize that my daughter was watching from her room. You know, like Mother James talked about, I didn't realize the effect that my daughter had until she was an adult. All I could do in the moment was pray that I didn't die with that gun to my head. I didn't even realize that my daughter was watching from the room. I didn't even hear her say, "If you take my mama, you got to take me," because all I could do was think about, this can't be the way that I'm going to leave my kids. Like, God, you cannot let this happen to me and leave my kids behind with this monster. So in that moment, all was going through my mind was, how can I survive? God, don't let the gun go off. And like Mother James said, my daughter didn't until later say that traumatized her for life. She didn't tell, her husband until later that was a trauma that always triggers something in her, because it stayed with her. And when your kids are young, you think you do everything you can to protect them from all of the outside things that are going on with you, but they see it, they hear it. I didn't even realize when she was 3 years old. You think because kids are so young that they don't recall what's happening. But she knew. She said, Mommy, when you thought I was sleeping, I heard Daddy throwing you against the wall, and I just never knew that. I just thought I kept it, behind the doors, and they couldn't see or hear anything. And, most of the time he did things when the kids were sleeping or if they weren't in the house. So they wouldn't know that, he's the bad guy, so to speak. But that particular time was the times that she remembered, and I had no idea. I thought I was protecting them, but I couldn't hide them from it. Just couldn't hide them from it at all. I couldn't hide it as much as I thought I did.
And that's one of the things that we're going to get to just a little bit later. Who does it affect in the house, and what resources maybe we'll have for them. But Dr. Snow, I want to maybe, since you talk to both sides of whether it's the person that's being abused or the abuser, I remember being told on multiple occasions I should beat you like my daddy beat my mama. And, first time you hear it, you're like, well, wait a minute. Did I hear what I thought I heard? Like, well, I mean, what if that was true? Why would you say that out loud? You see what I'm saying? Why would you say that? So do you find that abusers are victims as well?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, no doubt about it. 80% of all behaviors are learned, and generally it's passed on from generation to generation to generation. Ironically, it's so sad that the most murdered woman in the United States, it's the Black woman. And I was disturbed by that fact. And so it made me dig a little bit deeper. But when the slaves were brought over and master boss men just mutilated Black men in front of Black women, and the way Black men was done, and abused sexually as well as physically and mentally and so forth, then it's not right. But Black men, once they got free, even after Juneteenth, if we know what happened on Juneteenth in Texas, you begin to see Black men begin to copy the same behaviors that was done to them. And so it just kept passing on and passing on. And the sons of Black men saw how their dad beat their Black mothers, and they began to beat their wives, and it was just passed on. Now it is believed that that Martin Luther King Sr., Daddy King, as we used to call him way back in the day, when he was 15 years old, they're from Stockbridge. When he was 15 years old, his daddy came home and beat his mama over a fish. The way the story goes, Martin Luther King Sr. jumped into it, and so him and his dad got in a vicious fight. Okay. His mama sold some cattle and livestock and got him out of there and got him to Atlanta. So that's how the King family ended up in Atlanta. But Martin Luther King Sr. says the buck stops here. My daddy may have done this, but we're not going to do it. So he was really one of the first initiators of civil rights and against abuse, because behaviors, many perpetrators were victims themselves, and they keep passing it on and they keep passing it on.
Okay, y'all know this is Community Social Justice. Again, my name is DeShannon, and I'm your host tonight, but I'm also a guest because I guess you can say I'm a survivor. Saying that out loud really puts it into perspective, because again, we were taught what goes on in our house stays in our house. You don't go out and tell business.
Right.
This is our business. This is and I found myself telling my children, don't go to school telling business. I was doing that when they were little, because they knew mom looked good, mom had a briefcase, mom had a high powered job. They didn't really see dad as much. They knew he was in the home, but because of what he did, kept him away from home a lot. And so I was adamant about, don't go to school telling business. And so, Sonia, I want to talk to you about the secrecy in it. How can we free people from keeping such a what could potentially be deadly secret?
DeShannon, one of the things that I have often found is that very same family system rule, basically. And truthfully, I myself have grown up in that as being a rule. What stays in the house, what happens in the house stays in the house. We've got to be able to free people and people keep it to themselves. Let me back up for a second. They keep it to themselves because they've been taught, but they also keep it to themselves because they fear there's not going to be much support. So they fear that they're going to be judged. They're going to be shamed. That is the absolute worst thing that can happen, is for victim shaming to take place. So people feel, I'm just going to keep it because so-and-so can't help me anyway. And so being able to make someone feel, as I may have mentioned last time, making people feel supported, making people understand and feel that they're not going to be judged because of their experience, but we are going to be able to help them. I love this format because help is available, as we have said before, and being able to understand that there are tons of resources. And while this victim may be going to people who they feel can help them, there may be a redirect that needs to take place in order to actually get the help that they need to get. And so being able to break through that place of shaming, that place of lack of support, that fear that exists is so important, and it's so crucial. Secrets keep us sick. They really do. They keep us sick from the inside. We're carrying burdens that I think all of us would be in agreement the Lord himself did not and would not want for us to continue to carry. We're not supposed to be beaten. We're not supposed to be emotionally abused. We're not supposed to be financially abused, sexually abused. None of that stuff is of God. And there is freedom that exists. And we've got to be able to walk alongside people, meet them where they are, remove the judgment, remove the stigma, encourage them to say something, and then be present when they do and lend the true, accurate help.
Okay, we're gonna we've been talking a lot about the church and Christianity and what the Bible says, and all of us are believers on this panel. And we've got Vanessa, who was married to a preacher's kid, so somebody that grew up in church. Mother's been in church her whole life. Her mother's been in church her whole life. Both of my parents are ministers, and I wanted to stay married because to keep doing what I was doing at church required me to live the way they wanted me to live. How can you preach the gospel in your marriage, though? How can you teach Bible study in your marriage, though? How can you female ministers already have a tough time. So how in the world are you going to stand before God's people and you can't even keep your house together? So I stayed married so I could keep doing what I thought God had called me to do. Because if the church knew, would they let me preach on Sunday? Or would I be regulated to, a Women's Day? Because sometimes they only want us on Women's Day. But, I was actually getting to preach on other Sundays. Like I was starting to be well known. So how could you stand before God's people, but you wasn't even keeping your husband happy? Because it had to be something I was doing. So Vanessa, I want to go with you first. You loved God. You knew what the word said. And no doubt somebody had pointed out the God hates divorce scripture in your face.
Oh, yeah.
Be submissive to your husband.
Yes.
It had to be something that you wasn't doing. Tell me how that was for you, showing up at church, being abused the night before. How was that?
It was tough because I was taught that I needed to show up with my Pentecostal smile so nobody would know the difference. And I remember fighting the night before, fighting the morning of, basically arguing all the way to the church parking lot, and got there with my ex saying, "You better change the face." And we both got out, and there was one of the elders that said, "Man, we need more couples like y'all, because y'all are the epitome of a good married couple." And all I could do is say to myself, if you only knew, if you only knew. But what I will add to that is you can try to love somebody as much as you can. But if they don't love themselves, if they don't recognize for themselves that they have an issue, there's nothing you can do to change it. Because I tried my hardest to love this man past anything I thought that might have been an issue for him, but it was never enough because it wasn't me. It was within him.
Dr. Snow, talk to us about the ownership, it seems. Now, we're just talking about women being the victims here. The ownership it is on the woman to make it right or to fix it or to help it, or it's our fault.
Mhm. Right. You know, the number one book in the world still is the Bible, but it is also the most misconstrued Bible word in the world. Those scriptures that people use, the perpetrators use, don't even apply to women being victimized. It's just a way that our forefathers handed down the interpretation of scriptures, making it seem that it was the woman's responsibility. That is not scripture. Those scripture doesn't even apply. Women standing in the gap for their husband. That scripture was not even talking about marriage. It wasn't even applicable to relationship. That was a scripture when God was getting ready to have judgment, and he needed someone to stand in the gap. So, unfortunately, what we've done, we have made women feel that it is their fault by using the scriptures. And once again, by way of reiteration, the scriptures has been misinterpreted. As a matter of fact, in the men's classes, guess what is the number one thing that they use to justify their abuse toward their victims? They'll quote the scriptures in a minute. I mean, they're court mandated to be there, but yet they'll quote the scripture. She should have shut up. She shouldn't have said nothing. I'm the boss. I'm the head. I'm still the head. Okay, but being the head doesn't mean that you are supposed to abuse. All of those scriptures are wrongly interpreted, and they have made women feel that is responsible. But it's because those scriptures were wrongly interpreted.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that's something I don't think a lot of men are ready to hear. So I'm going to let you, doctor, keep working on those men over there. But Mother James, being a Christian, did you feel like your responsibility to pray your marriage through?
I prayed mostly for the relief of getting out of the marriage. I didn't want to continue in it. Once I spoke of divorce, it just made things worse with him. And I would pray, Lord, keep him from doing harm to me. That was my prayer, basically. And I did pray. I prayed for my children because it began to affect my son, who began to act out behavior in the classroom. And I would have to leave my classroom and go and see about my son in his elementary school because he knocked over the fishbowl, or he started fighting the students and wouldn't obey the teacher. And all of this was beginning to affect my children. And I didn't feel I needed to stay because of the children. My daughter was not his child, but the son was. And it was just a bit much. When I would go to school in the morning, get in my car, I'd look over, and the next thing I know, before I could lock my doors, there he is. So one morning, he forced his way almost to my job before I went into a MARTA station in the parking lot. Put my car in park and jumped out of the car. I had my protective order with me and everything. I was teaching in Atlanta. But the officer came and everything, but he said, ma'am, there's nothing I can do with a protective order from DeKalb County. It would have to be from Fulton County. So there I was, he finally ran and went out of the way, and I was able to go to work, but I was a nervous wreck. So, I would pray at school, pray when I get home. It was just constantly praying, God, show me a way. Show me the way. So God led me to an attorney that worked with me, and we were able to get this thing resolved in a manner. It became ugly, but as the Lord would have it, he didn't show for court on the day that the judge was supposed to stamp my divorce. So to God be the glory.
Well, I mean, I laugh not because of the story, because of the relief. I understand that relief. I could not no longer ask God to bless something that he never ordained in the first place. That was a man I chose.
All right.
That wasn't something that God put together. Let no man put us. No, don't come with me with that. Don't come for me when you don't know what's happening in here. This is somebody I chose. This is a relationship I chose. And so you can't expect, what are we asking God to do here? So when I got okay and I'm not, somebody is somewhere trying to figure out something. I've been in abusive relationships that I wasn't married to. It's back in high school is where it started for me.
Oh.
Because I'm a lighter complexion, so they would grab me by my arms and my arms would be bruised up because they knew they couldn't do anything to my face because everybody would see it. So it would be my legs or it would be my arms would be bruised. And I'm talking about I'm in high school. But people say, oh, well, if the boy hits you, that means he likes you. See, that's the stuff that they start at in the playgrounds. If he pushing you down, that means he likes you. So it's almost conditioning you to be okay with somebody doing something to you that hurts. And whether it's mentally hurt or physical hurt or emotional, financial, and we named all of these things last time. I mean, I look back and see how long was somebody hurting me. And it started on the playground. That boy just likes you. He likes you. That's why he pushing you down. It's like, what? So I want to start there, maybe. But I want to go to Vanessa real quick. Vanessa, I know you've had more incidents than the gun, than fussing all the way to work. All the way to church, or it might be work. But were there ever a time that you just said, we have to address this, and you tried to address it? Because the perception is that we just allow it, like we just ain't doing nothing. We just chilling over here, letting somebody do this. So can you talk to me about what was the interchange when things got bad?
I did address it. And I remember feeling like it was going in a vicious cycle. So I started a journal. And for several years in the journal, looking back, I realized it was a repeat. Every few months, we'd have a conversation. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to raise my voice. I didn't mean it that way. And then it would get better. It would go, into what we call that honeymoon phase all over again. So when in the honeymoon phase, there was showering of gifts. We would, take a trip even, just to prove that I'm going to be better. I promise I'm going to be better. But looking back in the journal before getting, just really fed up and getting to the gun incident, we had done that several times. Sometimes it may be 3 months. Sometimes it might be 5, could be a little longer. But it was just the cycle on repeat. It was always on repeat.
And when we're talking about cycles and things are happening and we know that they're bad and, and we've talked about the secrets and, someone said to me, well, you got a brother. Why didn't you tell your brother? because I didn't want my brother to know. One, I didn't want my brother to get in trouble because I know he loves his little sister. And I just could not believe that I had gotten myself into something like this. Here I am. I'm relatively bright. I've done well in my career. I'm doing what? How in the world did I get myself into this? And so
Well,
I
can I
felt,
say something?
yeah.
Can I say something to Shannon? To that point, when people look at you as the strong individual, you got yourself put together, is what they see on the outside. All of those components play a part that I don't want anybody to be embarrassed of me because I got myself in this situation. How can you be that strong and fall for something like that? But you don't just fall for something like that. It happens over time. And if you are that strong person all the time, you have to keep up that appearance. And you don't, for me, it was not being, I didn't want to be ashamed of being stuck in that situation. Like, you are smart. Like, why can't you pull yourself out of this? And then if you were to tell anybody, it's gonna cause somebody to, like you said earlier, get into trouble. Somebody's gonna either get hurt, killed, or in prison for something that you think, at least for me, thought that I could get a handle on, but just couldn't.
I like that. I want to go to Sonia. And where do you normally meet someone? Why do they seek you out? Is it what's made them say? And I know it might be different from everybody, but I want to get to the help piece because we know it's happening. We know it's happening to people that look like me, that look like Vanessa, that looks like Mother James. It has no age limit. It has no ethnic background. It's happening. But what happens when a person seeks help? Like, I don't want to be like Mother. I want somebody to be like Mother. Her protective order was for 20 miles down the road, and she done crossed the county line, and somebody's saying they can't help her. Or if I seek help, can I get it? Can I really get the help I need?
They can. Unfortunately, we know that we're dealing oftentimes with in domestic violence situations. There's a legal factor, there's a legal system, and unfortunately, it is broken on many terms, as Mother James was talking about. Who would have ever thought that the protective order was only going to be limited to that particular area, where venue, if you will, for lack of a better, was proper, and she's in another county. Help should have been available across county lines. So we're dealing oftentimes with a broken system. Um, Going back to something you said earlier, what makes people kind of even come in? A lot of times, what I see, DeShannon, is people, they're not as forthcoming, as we mentioned earlier, from a secrets place, and so they come into the office, but they're coming in and under something that is a story that they've gotten comfortable with sharing, such as, "Oh, I don't know why I'm depressed. Um, I've got this backstory of childhood trauma," something else that it can hide under. It's not until you start peeling back the layers of the onion that you start to realize there's far more going on. And then that's when they start to establish that level of trust and vulnerability and comfort to finally disclose what has been happening. Now, there's another side of that pendulum of people who are in an actively domestic violence situation, and they know what it is, and they just don't know how to get out. So the help that's often provided in the counseling realm is creation of a safety plan, giving availability to the resources, much like the resources that have continuously been put up on screen this evening, reminding people that there are 1-800 numbers, there are crisis lines, there are local shelters in which help continuously is available, making a person understand they are not alone in any of this. And so, is help available? Absolutely. Is there a flawed system? If I'm truthful, 100%, yeah. but getting that protective order, keeping it with you in life or death situations is definitely going to be the key. And understanding that if there are children involved, safety is going to be the first thing. Many women can't just up and leave the house in the middle of the night because they have nowhere to go, because part of the cycle has been they've been isolated socially. They've been set apart. The perpetrator has created this air in the relationship of Bonnie and Clyde. It's me and you against the world. And so they kept her, or she's kept him, away from everybody. And so there's literally in many places nowhere to go. So the moment that they become aware that there are resources, there's help available, and it exists in the form of shelters, emergency shelters, crisis lines, memorizing phone numbers, because you don't want to take a number and have it written down, because that jeopardizes your safety in many cases as well. Perpetrator wants to know whose number is this. So you want to be able to gain access to the resources and the materials. I've had women sit in my office and we've had to literally make and go through calls and try to make up this system where she can remember various numbers to call in the middle of the night. You had to make a safety plan where she's able to leave cell phones and stash cash with someone who's trusted, just in case she has to leave. So the help
we want people to feel safe, be safe, create a plan, all of that stuff. I want, Dr. Snow, I'm going to bring you back in to talk to us about how do we start the healing process? I mean, because sometimes I wonder about myself, like, am I healed or is it just suppressed? Have I just decided to move on? Or can you talk to us about that?
Yes, Shannon, that is an excellent, excellent question to ask. I think what most people don't realize that a great deal of female perpetrators were actually victims themselves. They finally rose up, got tired of being beaten, got mutilated, stepped on, walked on, kicked, made ashamed. And so when they stood up, but unfortunately, when they stood up, at that time, they began to act out violently. And so they got arrested for something that they were actually defending themselves for. So what we need to do, the process, now I echo everything that Sonia just said about having a prepared plan. Women need to do that. And in addition to that, women are traumatized. When you are traumatized from domestic violence, you need the healing process in your mind. You can think that you are free, but not. See, a trauma, just putting it simply, a trauma is any experience that from that point on, you're not the same. Now, you think you are. You think you are. You think, out of sight, out of mind. That's a good saying, and it works when you're trying to find your keys and you can't find them. But out of sight, out of mind does not work for trauma. Trauma may leave the conscious, but it goes down into the unconscious. It's never, until it's healed, it's always there. It's always controlling you. It's always affecting you. So number one, we need to help women, and in the cases of men too, to understand you need, number one, to ask God to heal you of that trauma, that traumatic experience. Because actually, pure 100% healing emotionally and mentally can only come from God. No matter, we're going to do the work. We're instruments therapeutically, but the true healing comes from the power of God. So we need to take people back to the scriptures. They are healing scriptures for trauma. We take them back to those scriptures, point them out to them, and let them recite those scriptures over and over and over again. So we begin, number one, spiritually to start perpetuating healing. And then we move to the clinical. We use the scientific proven steps that's been proven to work to help people mentally and emotionally to get on the road of recovery from healing. Because, you know, there's so many times, see, trauma will do this. It'll bury itself for 50 years, and 50 years later, all of a sudden rise up. And that's why when you get married, you are more than likely to, whatever was there is going to multiply 3 to 7 times after you get married. And that's why we said people change. No, they didn't change. It was already there. It was just unconscious. Then marriage squeezes it out. So real quickly, we start spiritually. We take the word of God and we work healing spiritually. Then we bring in the clinical to help people take steps to therapeutically start healing themselves so they can in the future have a life of healing and restoration.
I love that. I love that so much, because we're using the scriptures in the way that we feel like will benefit us, and we really need to use them appropriately. Vanessa, I'm going to ask you, in your professional life now, how has this experience helped you help people?
It has helped me to help other people, because I got a chance to look at myself. I didn't realize going through some of my clinical courses that I would uncover some of my own hidden traumas, like Dr. Snow talked about. Um, and when I did that, it helped me be a little more relatable, because I thought, like he mentioned earlier, that because it was out of sight, it was buried. I didn't have to deal with it. I was fine. I was pushing forward in life. I got my degrees. I'm going to help people because that was my goal. You know, I was hurt. I felt like this was my way to, to bring some change. But not until I went through some of those courses, sitting across from my, my fellow students, and listening to my professor say, we're going to reenact what you think this might look like. Did I see myself? And I was determined in my mind I was gonna be a voice, and I was gonna make a difference. And it was more impactful than I thought it would ever be. But I'm happy but I did get to see that, and I wanted to make a difference. And I appreciate this platform to help do that, because, when people see you on, on a stage, and you're giving a motivational speech, or given the book, like we mentioned earlier, I do have the book, The Matrix, A Look Inside Domestic Violence. A part of that came about is because when I was reaching out for resources for help, I didn't feel like I had all the information that I needed. So I had to put that down so that it could be in just basic terms, not just all clinical, so that people can see, you might be going through the same thing that I'm going through. You may look like me, but nobody knows that you have an inner struggle going on. And it's powerful. It's powerful. What we're doing right now is powerful, because, like Sonia mentioned earlier, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be affected by domestic violence. It doesn't matter the economic status you have. It doesn't matter your race, your religion, your background. None of that matters. And we may have talked last week, and I don't know, if you were here with us last week, we talked about teens. There's 1 in 5 teenage girls are going to be affected. And statistics show that those girls that are going to be affected, they're going to be reached by violence from young men between the age of 18 and 24. And that means that this violence is starting early. So if we don't have the conversation now, even though it's difficult, we're going to still have violence that's going to continue. So the tough conversation needs to be had, but that conversation can save one life. And if it's one life that we can save in that conversation, we need to do it.
I love that. I love it, because having the hard conversations tonight is a hard conversation. Mm-hmm. And it's a hard conversation because it's not always talked about. It's not widely said. We know what's happening. But we used to tell our testimony. And then now we just kind of get up there with, I'm glad he woke me up this morning, started me on my way, gave me use and activity of my limbs. We do that. We forgot that it's our testimony that will free someone else.
Mhm.
And so I'm very grateful. So Mother James, I want you to tell people how your experience has helped you help people.
I lost.
Can you hear me?
I lost a bit of your thing. Okay. For some reason, I can hear you very well.
Okay, I just
Can
asked
you hear
how
me?
your experience helped you help other people.
You're not here.
Well, Mother's having a little bit of technical difficulty, which is okay. I want to talk to Sonia. And I want you just to talk to the person who may or may not look like me, may or may not look like Vanessa, may or may not look like Mother, and not sure what to do. Let her know that there is somebody, that help is available. What would you say to her?
I would say recognizing that being in a domestic violence relationship, it's not going to serve. I realize there's a level of love that may be there for the person who's abusing. One of the titles of this format is Love Doesn't Hurt. And getting to that place of understanding that if it's causing you pain, if it's causing you not to thrive, if you realize that there's more to life than being able to have the courage. I think I've said to someone before, sometimes, a lot of times, the courage just really isn't in staying. The courage a lot of times comes from being able to leave, because you're leaving what you know, and you're willing to step out there to be able to have a quality of life, to be able to have safety, to be able to breathe without someone controlling your every move or questioning your every move. And so being reminded that you are worth it. Your family is worth it. Your children are worth it. And a lot of times there's been some level of a strategy that I have found that the abuser has been implementing and utilizing to trap the victim, to keep the victim in that cycle. And so understanding that one of the courageous things to do is to continue this movement forward, to move from the victim into the place of being the survivor, and to really understand that he or she is really worth it, and that God loves them so much and wants them to have wants them to have access to a quality life. Love truly does not hurt. Help is continuously available. And realizing that you got to take that step. You have to, because that staying where you are will kill you.
Wow. I mean, some of this, and I'm never speechless ever. But sometimes you just have to let things sink in, actually hear what people are saying. So, Dr. Snow, you deal with both sides. You've seen it all. Your name precedes you. You are, I mean, if not the best, one of the best doing what you're doing from a not only a clinical perspective, but a Christian perspective, trying to get some of these scriptures straight and in men's minds or women's minds or whoever is the abuser. But I just want you to just talk to somebody who's literally saying, what can I do? What's next? How? What? I mean, they have, because the emotions are just rampant. Just talk to them. Just, what would you say to somebody just not sure what to do?
Well, one of the things that I teach Shannon is that love equals safety. The most powerful statement that a woman can say about her husband or boyfriend in a relationship is that I feel safe. If you can't make that statement, then you know there is something wrong. I don't care if it's your boyfriend, if it's your husband, or whoever it is. Can you make that statement? Can you actually say you feel safe? Well, if you can make that statement, then you're probably in pretty good shape. But if you cannot make that statement that you feel safe, then that is a relationship you need to think about, because love is safety.
Whew. Okay, I'm like way over my time, guys. I'm usually very mindful of the time, and so thank you guys for hanging out with us. We were talking about, domestic violence, what it looks like, who may be affected, how it affects other people, being safe, um, being able to say, I feel safe. That is powerful. So I want to appeal to everyone right now, whatever status you are in, whether it's you're not married, but you're in a relationship, do you feel safe? Can you make that declaration without a shadow of a doubt? Because this is key to knowing if you're in a situation that needs to change. We're going to keep talking about this. We wanted, we might bring it back next week. Kind of want to get through the breakthrough part, divine breakthrough maybe. But we talked about the stats. We talked about the 1 in 4. We talked about what it looks like and the secrecy and the shame and using scripture to justify it. But I really, really want to get to the help, the healing, I know Dr. Snow gonna start charging us here in a minute, and we can't pay his prices, but we ask that God do what he can do on that end. But I think it's so necessary because a lot of us are smiling and broken on the inside. A lot of us have pretended that it's not happening, and it is. And we want to keep pulling off those layers so that you can be exactly who God wants you to be, which is healthy, wealthy, whole. He wants you to prosper as your soul prospers. And God will not give you a broken gift. Every good and perfect gift comes from God. So some of these things that we have wanted for ourselves doesn't necessarily mean God wanted them for us, but God is a keeper. He is a healer. He is a deliverer, and he's a covering God. And so help is available to you. We're going to keep these posters up. We're going to keep showing you these numbers. We want you to know that help is available to you. So now I know we have all kinds of topics on community social justice. We have school topics. We have voter suppression. We have race and racism. We have legal and legislative. We have police in the community. We've talked about a lot of things. But this is something we're going to keep talking about well after the month is over, because the abuse is not going to stop when the month ends. So I want you to ask yourself, are you safe? And if the answer is even remotely no, utilize one of these numbers that we've been flashing on the screen. We will post them on Community Social Justice and on all of our pages. You will start seeing it more and more from me. And you are not alone, and there is nothing for you to be ashamed of. So, thank for all my guests, Dr. Tommy Snow. Thank you. Vanessa really my girlfriend. We girls now. I think she is just amazing. I want her to do some more things in this area. Sonia, I didn't even know Q was your husband, but I know now. So they like my friends. They ain't even know it. And Mother, do you realize just sharing your story freed somebody? And even me. I'm sitting here, I always got a smile. I help people get their own lives together. But I had to admit out loud that I'm a survivor too. And because I'm a survivor and God kept me, I know it's to share my story to help somebody else. So this has been an amazing episode of Community Social Justice, a serious conversation about domestic violence. Next week, we're going to come back. We're just going to keep this topic because it's something that we need to continue talking about. I know, you heard us say we were going to do something on the election and all of that. But you know what? The election is going to take care of itself. We're needing to touch the hearts and minds and souls of people because that's what we're here to do. So when we help one, God is pleased. And that's what community social justice is doing, trying to please God. So until next time, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. God bless you. We'll see you next week.